Larry Hester is 66 years old and totally blind. He's about to experience a miracle.
Yeah. Everybody ready? So 3, 2, 1, start. Yes.
Can you see?
Oh my goodness.
Wow, can you see, Larry?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Can I give him a kiss?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Can you really see?
Yes.
Oh
it's
my
flashing.
goodness.
Big time flashing.
They're flashing?
Larry has been blind for more than 30 years from a condition called retinitis pigmentosa. It sounds like pure science fiction, but he can see again thanks to a bionic eye.
Wow. I mean, that's significant right there.
Wow, that's cool.
It's something that was science fiction, obviously, 25 years ago. And when I first started doing research in this area, people thought I was a little crazy. But eventually the technology caught up and made it possible.
Dr. Robert Greenberg is the driving force behind a so-called bionic eye that enables blind people like Larry to see again. The bionic eye is actually a system consisting of an ocular implant, glasses fitted with a tiny camera, and a small computer processor. Bob has been developing this system for more than 25 years. His interest in a bionic eye started when he was a student at Johns Hopkins Hospital. By chance, a retinal surgeon invited him to witness a key procedure.
This doctor was getting ready to do an experiment. It was actually the first experiment at Johns Hopkins, where he was going to put an electrode in a blind patient's eye and under local anesthesia and electrically stimulate the patient's eye. And here I was, a second-year medical student, and being invited the first time ever into an operating room. And he put this electrode in the patient's eye, and the patient saw a spot of light. And he put a second wire in the patient's eye, and he saw 2 spots of light, this totally blind patient. And I was hooked at that moment, because I said, wow, if this blind patient can see 2 spots of light, if we can do 100 spots of light, they can see an image. And it's just engineering, and I was trained as an engineer, so I said, I think I can do this.
It took Bob 25 years of hard work, but last year his first patient received the gift of sight. His research focuses mainly on patients who have gone blind due to damage to the retina. Sight is generated when light falls onto the retina at the back of the eye. Delicate cells called rods and cones in the retina convert light into electrical impulses that are transmitted via the optic nerve to the brain's visual cortex. The brain interprets these impulses as images. However, if the retina is damaged through injury or disease, vision is impaired. One of the conditions that affect the rods and cones in the retina is retinitis pigmentosa, or RP, a disease that leads to blindness. Claudette Medefint is the Director for Science at Retina South Africa, an organization for people affected by RP. She also suffers from the disease and has only about 10% sight.
It's a genetic condition that you inherit from your parents. You know, you inherit genes from your parents, and some genes have got mistakes. And this particular mistake leads to a breakdown in the photoreceptors, which are the cells in the eye that react to light.
When the photoreceptors, the rods and cones on the surface of the retina, start to degenerate, they cannot send impulses to the optic nerve. First, peripheral vision is lost. Tunnel vision develops, and this eventually leads to blindness. There is no cure. So are you going to go completely blind?
If I live long enough, yes. The rate of degeneration is different from person to person, but you're losing about 10% a year. So that little island of vision that I've got is getting narrower and narrower. And in some cases, you lose it completely. So that thought is very frightening, because even though I've only got a little bit of vision, it's very precious.
It was with RP sufferers in mind that Bob began to develop his technology at the Second Sight facility in California. His aim was to electronically replicate what the diseased retinal cells could no longer do. His solution is known as a retinal prosthesis system. Bob calls his system the Argus, referring to the 100-eyed giant of Greek mythology.
So the way the Argus 2 works is there's a pair of glasses with a video camera on the bridge of the nose, and a signal from the video camera, obviously like a cell phone camera or any video camera, picks up the scene in front of the patient, and that scene is then wirelessly transmitted to an implant that is in and around the eye.
In this mock-up, the red strips represent the eye muscles, and the implant can be seen on the upper left side of the eye. The implant itself consists of a tiny wireless receiver and an array of electrodes. This is the device about to be implanted in a patient's eye. The tiny receiver is positioned on the side of the eye and fastened. The electrode array is pushed into the eye itself through a small incision. Here it is visible through the pupil. It is then positioned centrally on the retina adjacent to the optic nerve.
Those electrodes are kind of like lights, become lights on a scoreboard, and images are projected onto the retina electrically and corresponding to the signal from the video camera. And with that, these patients who are totally blind can see the images that are being transmitted from the video camera. It's implanted in an outpatient procedure. The patient gets it implanted, they go home the same day. Once it's implanted, you can't see it, the patient can't feel it. It essentially becomes part of their eye.
Patients do not regain normal 20/20 vision through the device, but the pixels they see allow them to identify objects, read large letters, and even to recognize faces in black and white. And the system can be continually upgraded thanks to the design of the processor.
The device is software-based, so just like an iPhone where you can upgrade the software and get new functionality, we can do the same with this. So some examples of things that we're working on in the clinic are ways of improving the resolution of the device to improve the clarity of the image, and also we've been able to produce color vision for patients where we've been able to provide different colors. And so those are the kinds of things that future software upgrades should allow.
The device was approved in the European Union and the USA in 2013, and implants became available there last year. The device has not yet been approved in South Africa. This is Jeroen Perk, who was robbed of his sight by retinitis pigmentosa many years ago. He received an implant last year. At an archery center in Holland, the instructor teaches him how to shoot arrows. With his bionic eye system, he's able to take aim and hit the target time after time. As the current system is designed to provide electrical impulses to the optic nerve, it means the optic nerve has to be intact for the system to work.
For other diseases like glaucoma or diabetic retinopathy or some forms of trauma or infection where that cable going back to the brain is actually damaged. And so for that, we're actually working on a version of the implant, very similar implant, where we put it directly to the visual part of the brain. And that's kind of the next step.
Bob plans to call this new generation of retinal prosthesis the Orion.
The Orion will benefit patients even that have had their eye removed for some reason. For some, maybe they had a cancer in their eye, maybe they had a very bad accident, and the Orion doesn't actually require an eye at all.
At the moment, the device costs in excess of R1 million and is this expensive because the cutting-edge facility where the implants and devices are produced had to be developed from scratch, as there was no prior technology to fall back on. There were also many new questions that needed answers in the development stages of the bionic eye.
There were questions like, the retina is very thin and delicate, like one-ply wet tissue paper. And so could you put something up against that retina in the back of the eye and not damage it? And could you electrically stimulate over a long period of time and not damage the retina? Could you miniaturize the electronics and put them in the saltwater environment of the body, which is like taking your TV and throwing it in the ocean and having it still work, and then miniaturizing it to the size of an aspirin? So could you do that engineering? So there were many challenges like that we had to overcome.
But it was worth it because the implants really change lives. Alan Sorensen went blind a decade ago, and his wife, children and grandchildren were present when his device was activated.
Yeah.
For the first time in 10 years, he saw his wife.
You know, one of the questions we wanted to know was, would it matter how long someone had been blind? It turns out it doesn't seem to make a difference whether they've been blind 1 year or 10 years or 20 years.
What Bob and his team at Second Sight have managed to achieve with new technology and miniaturization is impressive. But for them, the technology is not the most important thing. It is the impact it has had on their patients' lives.
It's unbelievably rewarding, and you know, the most rewarding thing, of course, is meeting the patients, and it's life-changing, is what people tell us.
Does this new technology give you hope?
Yes, this new technology is amazing because that technology is replacing lost photoreceptors, so people will be able to read, see faces, and be able to walk around and I'll be able to continue to see the face of my granddaughters.